Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another grandMA3 related live stream. Hope you're doing absolutely fantastic, and please let me know if you're there. Let me know in chat if you can hear me properly. Let me know if you can see me properly. That would be really awesome. And my lighting is here. Hey bro. Hey bro. Unfortunately, I do not know who you are. You can let me know. Maybe we know each other. Quint Giesberts, is this stream going to be uploaded? Well, I'd say most likely yes, but I'll decide afterwards. So if you don't want to miss it, then make sure to watch it live. But it might be uploaded afterwards as well. Milton de la Cruz is there. Hola, senor. It's always a pleasure to have you. Nice that you're there. So many people already. Crazy. G007, very curious about this one. Phasers are the only thing keeping me from moving from MA2. Yeah, I think this whole phaser topic is particularly interesting one to I guess all of us, and I totally understand that this might be the key for many, which might keep them from changing, or if you have unlocked it, then to go on with MA3, right? Delta Pirat, guten Abend. Moin Delta Pirat, cool, dass du da bist. Yeah, great. We are again, let me see how many people are in there. We are already 45 in the stream. That's awesome. Yeah, to put things a little bit into perspective, I'm mainly a grandMA2 programmer, and I've worked with grandMA3 now for about, I'd say, a couple of months. So, as all of you probably, I'm basically new to this whole platform and to this whole software. And I guess we all might agree on the whole phaser engine hasn't been fully developed yet. So keep in mind that if you're watching the stream in the future, but basically you're always watching the video now, right? But if you're watching this as a video on demand, then things might have changed completely. Today we're using software version 1.6, and of course things will develop with every software version, and so will the workflows, and so will this whole concept of phasers. So keep that in mind. Yes, so far. Christopher Tebbe. Moin Tebbe, cool, dass du da bist. It's a pleasure. Manuel Rodriguez, greetings from Amsterdam. Sick. Yeah, greetings. Very nice. Yeah, another thing that I want to point out is that this video isn't really meant to be a tutorial. I don't want to show you the one method, the right method. I don't even think there is one right method of achieving things. But yeah, it's more like I have figured out a way or ways for me that work fine, and I will show you my approach to things. So don't take anything that I will tell you today for a rule, but only as my particular way of doing things. And if you like certain things, then it's highly appreciated if you take them and incorporate them into your own programming style. Things that you don't like, just forget about them, right? And of course, it's very important to me that this whole stream is interactive, right? So that's the whole point of making this as a stream. So feel free to ask questions at any time. And even if you have tips or advice for me or for the whole community, that's highly appreciated as well, of course, because I don't consider myself being a professional grandMA3 programmer by any means, right? So as I said, I've done a couple of small shows with grandMA3, but I'm nowhere near the level that I am with grandMA2. So I think we all can learn from each other, and we all can improve with tips of the whole community, right? So let's see a few other people. Leo Steinhaus. Ja, Leo, servus. Das ist ja cool, dass du dabei bist. Da hoffe ich doch sehr, dass du heute gut aufpasst und ein bisschen was lernen kannst zum Thema Licht. Leo is a great bass player that I know, but I guess he's not that involved into lighting so far. Aber Leo, ohne Scheiß, ich finde es auch wirklich immer spannend, wenn Leute irgendwie zugucken, die jetzt nicht professionelle Lichtler sind. Also wenn dich irgendwas tatsächlich interessieren sollte, wie irgendwie das technisch hier funktioniert und wie man irgendwie an Sachen rangeht, feel free to ask, of course. Right. David Faltmeier, servus. Miko, is it your own Compact XT? Well, you might be surprised, but this isn't a Compact XT, because if you count the faders, I'll show you. It's basically only 10 faders. It's a command wing with 2 screens and a Intel NUC mounted to the back, all fitted into one neat case. But basically it's a on PC solution and not a Compact XT, as you might think. Delta Pirat, kannst du ja mal Werbung für unseren MA3 Discord-Server machen, der allerdings erstmal nur auf Deutsch ist. Okay, ich weiß jetzt tatsächlich nicht genau, welchen Discord-Server du meinst. Ich bin auf ein paar, aber feel free, den Link zu posten im Chat, wenn das möglich ist. Ich glaube, es müsste möglich sein. Wie gesagt, ich finde es immer cool, wenn die Community da irgendwie wächst und wenn man irgendwie solche Plattformen wie eben irgendwie einen Discord-Server hat, auf dem man zusammen ein bisschen rumnörden kann und sich gegenseitig helfen kann. Also feel free to post stuff like that in the chat. Rocco Mazzotto, ciao from Italia. Ciao! it's amazing. There are people here from all over the world. It's amazing. All right, I think we'll keep it for the introduction. Let me give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing is I will give you an overview of my particular workflow with phasers. As I said, it's just my thoughts on it, and take from it whatever you want, but I'll show you what the main concept is all about. Then I'll show you how to import predefined phasers. This might be known to most of you, but I still think that's a good starting point if you want to do your first phasers. That's where you should start, in my opinion. But then we'll build custom phasers, and we'll build a few Dimmerphasers, and we'll build a few Colorphasers with this integrate method, meaning that we are using presets within our phaser. We'll do a few Positionphasers, and then maybe if we have enough time, we'll talk about some more complicated things like flyouts. And we'll talk about modifiers. I have a bit a own thing of naming things. So we'll talk about template phasers and modified phasers, and I'll show you what I mean by that, of course. The Then we'll have a look into recipes and how to deal with phasers in recipes. And then we might have a small Q&A session where you can ask whatever you like, but most likely this will go on throughout the whole stream. So as I said, you can always ask questions, of course. And then I have prepared a special thing. I have prepared a show file with a grid of, I think it's 10 by 10 MegaPointies. So it's a whole lot of fun to work with such a matrix of MegaPointies. And we'll hit this matrix with phasers and with modifiers, and we'll just see with what crazy stuff we can come up with, right? So yes, let me have another look into the chat. Wo hast du das Case her? Ich suche momentan eine coole Lösung für mein Command-Ring. So, das Case ist tatsächlich komplett Custom-Build. Ich habe auch mal ein paar Fotos gepostet in der ein oder anderen grandMA3 Gruppe. Wenn dich das interessiert, wie ich das genau gemacht habe, schreib mich an auf Instagram oder Facebook. Dann schicke ich dir ein paar Fotos. Aber tatsächlich komplett Custom Build. Welche MA-Discord-Server gibt es denn noch? Ich weiß gar nicht, ob speziell MA, aber ich bin auf jeden Fall aus ein paar Servern am Start. Philipp Fuchs. Philipp, ey cool, du bist auch wieder am Start. Auch jedes Mal irgendwie dabei gewesen, glaube ich, bis jetzt. Welche MA-Cracks gibt es denn so? Ja, da reden wir jetzt gerade nicht drüber, würde ich sagen. Okay, so let's dig into it and let me show you my workflow. I hope you can see it. All right. So as I said, I've developed a kind of unique way, I think, to deal with phasers. And as I've already said, I'm a grandMA2 programmer mainly. So everything I do and everything we're going to talk about today is kind of seen through the eyes of an grandMA2 programmer, right? And I will tell you all the similarities and all the differences between the two platforms, of course. And that's kind of my approach. I kind of want to incorporate a similar workflow that I have in MA2 to my MA3 programming. So basically the first thing that I do and that I would recommend doing is creating universal template phasers. And those template phasers are not really the same thing as template effects in MA2. I more or less tend to think about those as just being a form. You had in MA2, you had those basic forms like sine waves, pulse width modulation, and cosines, and whatever, ramps, and so on and so forth, circles, of course. And I tend to think of those universal template phasers as forms, but they are not really forms because they already have the attributes that the phaser uses stored within them. So it's kind of a mixture between template effects and forms in MA2 terms, right? And we'll create those as universal presets. And you might think, wow, that's super complicated, what I do. But the thing is, you need to keep in mind that you only have to do this once in your life, basically, because once you have programmed those universal template phasers, the preset data is stored within your universal fixture, meaning that you can use this with every new fixture that you put into your show, and you do not have to set those phasers up again and again. You really have to do this once. So even though it might be a little bit complicated and time consuming, I think it's a great way of working with phasers. And then the second step, the fun step if you like, is to modify those phasers, those template phasers, and basically hit them with face, hit them with wings, groups and blocks and all that fun stuff. And basically to do this there are 3 ways, well actually there are even 4. The first one is doing this with MA3. And you'll see that this is a cool way, and I think it's my preferred method of doing it because it's very quick. And there you have this cool swiping method that I have shown in an earlier stream, but I'll show you today how it works. I think it's really cool, but it's really just a quick and dirty way of doing things. So yeah, and you cannot really use this for cloning. And when I talk about cloning in these regards, I always mean, I don't mean just swapping fixtures, but changing the amount of fixtures that you got in your show. So when you're changing the amount of fixtures, this MA3 method isn't great because yeah, it don't work for it. It doesn't work for new selections of fixtures. And it's a little bit hard to modify it later. So when you store those preset into those phasers into a preset or into a queue, you can't recall the MA3 values that you put into. So you have to basically, if you want to modify those phasers, you basically have to start from the beginning. So that's the downside. And then we have the recipe method, which basically is 2 methods because you can use those recipes in presets and you can use it in queues as well. So it's basically 2 methods in one. That is great for cloning because you can just update your groups and then use the cook command of cooking your recipes, and then your phaser looks as you would expect it to look. It's pretty easy to modify once you have set it up, but it is a little bit more time consuming to get it up and running. I personally think that the user interface of doing it is pretty bad till this day. And for me, one big minus is that shuffle isn't working in those recipes, at least as far I know. And then the third method of modifying phasers is within the programmer, just basically using your encoders and the encoder bar. However, as I've written here, I'd always try to avoid this method whenever it's possible. Okay, so that is the main workflow. We'll dive into that now, and maybe we'll come back to this chart to explain certain things. Right, but for now, if you do not have any questions so far, I'd say let's just yeah, dive into it. Es gibt ein Peli-Case für den Command Wing, auch ganz cool, falls man nur den Command Wing ohne Monitore transportieren will. Ja, das ist dann super platzsparend und gut zu transportieren. Leider, und das ist auch der Grund, warum ich mich eher für dieses Setup entschieden habe, leider passt dieses Peli-Case mit dem Command Wing trotzdem nicht ins Handgepäck. Das heißt, anders als andere Marken, Chemsys zum Beispiel, hat MA jetzt nicht bewusst darauf geachtet, dass man das in so übliche Handgepäckgrößen mitnehmen kann. Und weil es dann doch sowieso zu groß war fürs Handgepäck, habe ich gesagt, gut, dann ist egal. Dann will ich mir das alles in einen Case bauen und ich spare mir die ganze Verkabelung mit Monitor und oder mehreren Monitoren sogar und einem extra PC und so weiter und so fort. So far. TD, guten Abend. Servus. Alright. Let's go into MA. And first of all, let's off my macro. So, as I said, the first thing that you might want to do if you are completely new to this whole phaser topic is you might want to import the predefined phasers. I think that's a real good starting point, and even if you are a little bit more advanced, it's so much easier to take those predefined phasers and modify them than building them from scratch. So I'd really recommend importing those predefined phasers at first. And for that, you just need a macro pool with an empty macro pool item. You hit edit and edit this pool item, and then you go to the import and search for phaser, or I think this might be enough, right? So you got this, make it a little bigger. You got this import predefined phaser macro, and you import it. And now it's really important to know and to understand that the predefined phasers are going to be imported into your all pool number 1, which is pool 21 in grandMA3. And if you want to change that, you could change this line and change it to another pool, of course. But for me, this is fine. So I'll just let it this way. And then I have here the predefined phasers pool. And right now let's hit the macro. Of course, I have moved it away because here it is. And it's the name is predefined phaser number 2 because I already had this macro in my show. But when you hit it, you see, well, there are a lot of predefined phasers. And actually, you can just grab a few fixtures, maybe washers, and start using these phasers, right? Oh, you can't see it. Sorry. Like so. Yeah, I've just selected a few fixtures, hit it with this predefined macro, and you're basically good to go. All right. As I said, we will go to this pool and maybe copy a few presets, maybe modifying a few of them. But what's really important for me is that all of those macros are visible, which you can tell by the small U. Let me make it a little bit bigger here. They all have a small U, which stands for universal, meaning that you can use those phasers not only with a particular selection of fixtures, but with basically all fixtures that are supporting the attributes the phaser uses, right? Of course. But that's very important for the template phasers that we are going to build. I have a view set up with a few different pools, as you can see here. Then I have a matrix pool to very quickly make use of the matrix, and I have a matrix window. A few macros, that's all I'm using for the phasers. I don't tend to have the phaser editor stored in a view because I'm just used to use MA phaser, or it's the X13 key. Let me show you. It's just MA and this key, and then it opens up. So that's for me the quickest way of doing it. And I tend to not use this phaser editor too much because I honestly don't like it. Okay, let's build a few template phasers. Let's start with that. And we will start very basic, very simple, with just dimmer phasers. I'll make grandMA3 MegaPointe-Grid big for you. I hope that works out. And I would highly recommend two things. First is build a preset pool, or just use a preset pool, all preset pool, just for your template phasers. In my case, it's pool 25, so all pool number 5. I've called it template phasers, as you can see here. And then you go to your pool options and select preset mode universal for that pool, because that's very important. As I've said already, those template phasers should be universal to be able to use them with any fixtures, even with fixtures that are not already in your show. So that's really important. And then the second thing that I would highly recommend is to build those template phasers always with just one fixture. Because when you want to make use of the phaser editor, it's so much easier if you have just one fixture in it than multiple ones. Then it's really doesn't work for me, honestly. Okay, so let's go and let's just select one of our washers, and I'll hit solo to solo it out, and then we'll go to the phaser, and well, we'll start with Dimmerphasers and we'll just build a ramp phaser. So we'll hit full. I'll off all my executors. So this full value now is just coming from the programmer, as you can see here. And then we click on this right arrow to create a second step. And the second step is just 0. And you can see that the phaser is already running. This is because I don't have single step enabled. With single step, you just see the actual step that is active in your encoder bar. But this is disabled, so you already can see the phaser running. And when you look into your phaser editor, you can graphically see what your dimmer attribute is actually doing. So it's ramping up and it's ramping back down. We could store this and we would already have our first phaser, but I would recommend to go into the relative layer of this phaser and set it to 0. So we have a relative value of 0 in both our steps. And another thing that I like to do is go into the phaser editor and go into the step view, because here you can see very analytically what you've done with your fixture, right? We have both steps a relative value of 0 and an absolute value of 100 in the first step and 0 in the second step. And I will explain later why this relative layer is kind of important. So we'll exit the phaser editor and just press and hold an empty pool item. And we have stored our first phaser. We give it a name. No, it's not a sign, but it's just a ramp. We'll call it again. And first thing is that I will move it to the second place, because there is even a dimmer phaser that is more important for me, and that is the sine phaser. And to change the form of your phaser, we go into the phaser editor and you can see it's just a ramp, ramping up, ramping down, right? But I want to change the form of this phaser. For that you have select all the steps, which you do with this. Whenever there is this asterisk at the 1, it means that you have selected all the steps that are stored in your phaser. And then you go to form and you select the sine wave, right? And you can very clearly see what's happening to the fixture. You can even see it better than in Capture with this phaser editor. and just one fixture selected, right? We're escaping, and we'll double check that we have the relative value stored in as well. And then we'll store this as our first phaser, calling this sine. All right, now we go to ramp. And the third form that we're going to create is what was called PWM in grandMA3. And for that, we just need to make sure that we have both steps selected. And then we go to transition and make it a transition of 0. So you can see in capture that the fixture is snapping on and off without any fade to it. Yeah, and we'll have a look at it in the phaser editor, so you can see it's just snapping down to 0 in the second step. And we'll store this as well. Call this PWM. Right, call this again, and now we're going to just the first step and make the transition back to 100. And you can see now the fixture is snapping off, right? And this will be the fifth form, snap off. Call it, and we'll make first step a transition of 0 and the second step a transition of 100. And there we got a snap on form. This is the fourth form for me, snap on. All right, so we have now built our first 5 Dimmerphasers. And as you can see, they are universal. Even though I have just used one fixture, I can use those phasers with every selection that I want to. So let's give it a try. I'll clear out, and I will select my spots. I have for every group of fixtures, I have a sim group. This is a linear selection of the fixtures, but in a symmetrical way. And then I have a grid group where actually where the actual position of the fixtures in relation to the rig is stored in. Okay, so I will just use my sim group. Then I will go to phasers, and I will hit it with a sine wave, and you can see, well, our dimmer sine is working. Let me show you the chart. Now I will give you a brief introduction of how to modify this phaser, right? So this is, as I said, this is step number 1. It's a template phaser, just with a very basic, basically a template phaser is a very basic rule of what the fixture has to do. It incorporates the form, in this case a sine wave, and it incorporates the attribute, in this case the dimmer, right? And this in combination is a template phaser. But now we're going to the second step, how to modify this, and we'll do this with MA3. So I will just assign a phase to this, maybe something like 360, and you can see already that we have pretty good looking effect, or a phaser of course, running. And now this drag and drop method, or however you want to call it, comes in, because you can modify this phase by just tapping and sliding over your screen. And I think that's a really neat way of modifying your effects, because it's really like, yeah, you can sit there like Bob Ross basically in front of an empty picture and just swipe across your MA3 window and create some some new looks. You of course can hit it with wings 2, making it symmetrical. Maybe we need a little bit more of a phase difference here. And you can see, well, we already have a symmetrical phaser running. And this phaser I would now store into my modified phaser pool, which is, as you can tell by the S here, it's a selective pool. So by just holding on an empty pool item, I will store this particular effect with the wings and with the phase assigned to it to a new modified phasers pool item, right? So that is basically what would have been a selective effect in grandMA2, kind of. Because the disadvantage is that you can't recall this MA-Trix information, right? By selecting and calling this preset again, you can see that the MA-Trix window is empty. That's the big disadvantage of this method. Right. Does it, Philip Fuchs, does it actually work the same way as MA2 to modify the effect? Example, assign effect X group, whatever. With macros or sequences and queues with command. Yeah, for this method of, let me make it a bit bigger. Philip, the method that you're looking for is like modifying the effects via command line. And for this method to work, I tend to think you need to work with recipes, or at least I think it's the more clean approach to it. And I'll show you how to do this. And by using recipes, you have a kind of same approach than with the effect line editor in MA2. And of course, you can modify those recipes via command. And I will show you later on how it works. All right. So back to MA. So now we have our sine wave running, and the cool thing is, oh no, it's not that cool because I have lost my MA-Trix. But I will just do it again. Select the spots and go into the sine effect, and then you can see I have a MA-Trix pool. So I don't always have to go there and type in 360, but I can just hit my macro, and or no, it's not a macro, it's just the MA-Trix item. Which is really neat and really simple. So I have things like 0 through 360 or wings 2, wings 4 I always have as an MA-Trix pool item. And it brings it back into the MA-Trix selection. Alright. Now we might want to change the form of it, and we can go to pulse with modifier. And you see, and that's a cool thing, that you don't have to start entering your MA-Trix values again. You can just go between those different forms of effect and can see what you like most. Right? However, the first thing that I wanted to change is the width of the effect, right? So meaning how many fixtures actually are on and how many fixtures actually are off. So go there with the ramp. Oh no, we take the spots. Make it 360, and that's a bit hard to achieve in let me say it this way. You would expect to be with what you are looking for. When you want to make less fixtures on at the same time, you might think, well, you have to reduce the width of the effect, right? Unfortunately, that is not how things work in MA3. So by using this width option in your matrix, you really have to open up your selection grid to see what it's doing. So let's go into a selection grid, and you see that with phase auto, I have my linear selection as it was, and hitting this with width, it really modifies the amount of columns in your selection grid. I have to be honest, I haven't found a real use for this, because it works kind of similar to just having groups of 3, for example, because that is what you're doing here. Haven't figured out a real use case for this. However, let's off this. You might think that you can change the width via the encoder bar, going into width and setting up here another width. But the problem with that is, as you might see, you're just messing with the timing of the effect, right? You're not really adjusting the width, or at least what I would think of the width, but you're just messing with the timing, because the width in this encoder bar, you can see pretty clearly when you go into the phaser editor. Well, actually you can't see because I have a total mess in the phaser editor, because there are multiple fixtures running at once with different phases, and it's just, you can't see anything. So that's the reason why I would suggest to just use one fixture whenever using the phaser editor. And we will select just one fixture, hit it with a ramp effect, like so. And now we're messing around with the width of maybe just the first step. And you can see, well, it's just, the width is meaning how much time of your whole phaser one step uses, if that makes any sense. So if you have a 2-step phasers and both steps are set to 100%, then every step will take exactly 1/2 of the whole phaser's time, right? And that's all this width is doing. So we have to find another way of achieving what we want. And I do it by, show you, I'll select one fixture, select my effect, and now the relative layer comes in place, because we go to the second step, and unfortunately I can't enter negative values into my absolute layer, right? I just can't stick negative values in, but I can go to the relative layer and, for example, set a -50 to the second step. Remember, the second step is the step with the dimmer at 0, and when you set -50 to the second step, that means that it even goes past 0, so to say. You can see it here in the phaser editor clearly, right? So the fixtures come on and they go off, and they will stay off for a short period of time. And that is actually what I want. So this -50 sine wave I will store to another template phaser, and I'll call this sine -50. I will call it again, go to the second step, and enter a -100 to build a third preset where the fixture even stays off longer. Fun fact, or I don't know if it's funny or not, but it turns out you can't enter -200 in here. However, when you have an encoder, you can go past 100 and go to 200 and even more. But I will stick with -100. So, because I tend to think this works fine, let's check. First is 0, second is -100, and I will call this sine -100. Right. So, and now I will go on a little bit quicker to build those different width of the effect for my other forms, right? So let's select a fixture and hit it with a ramp phaser. Go to the second step, go to relative layer and hit it with -50. And we'll store it. This is the ramp -50 preset. Then we go, we'll call it and go to, nope, 0, and just the second step, -100. And we'll store it here. Call this ramp -100. Okay, we'll continue with this with snap on. Go to the second step, relative layer, -50. Store it. Snap on -50. Call it. Go to the second step, -100. And of course, this -50, -100, these are just values that I figured out to work pretty good. But you can use your own values, of course, and you can even create more of those template phasers. For me, this works out fine. So this is, whoops, snap -100. Call the snap off. Second step, -50. Store. Snap off. Of course. Assign. -50. Call it. Second step, -100. Store. Snap off -100. Alright, and the only form that tends to work with this width method is a PWM, and it's the same way in grandMA2. When you try to mess with the width in a sine wave effect, it just looks ugly. And when you do it with a pulse width modifier, you really adjust the width of the effect, meaning how many fixtures are on and how many are off at the same time. So we'll do this here kind of the same way. So we go to, first of all, we go to the phaser editor because I want to see what I'm doing. And this way it's pretty clear. Let me make it big. MA only. Right, we go to width, or the first step, and then you can see we're messing with the timing of the first step, but that means that the second step, which is the off step, gets longer in relation to the whole phaser, right? And I tend to use 66%, and I'll still call it PWM -50, just to keep things clean and easy, right? So I will call it again. We'll look at the phaser editor, go to our first step, and make it a width of 33. So you can see the fixture now is even longer off than on. And we'll store this to this preset, which is PWM -100. Right, and then don't forget to store, because it was quite a whole lot of work to achieve simple things. But as I've already said, you only have to do this once in your life, basically, right? You have to set those template phasers up just once in your life, and then you can use them, when you keep them in your show, of course. Okay, let me have a look in chat. Miko, I think the width is there if you work with X, Y, and Z. Yes, exactly. So the width in MA3 modifies your selection grid, basically. And the width in your encoder bar modifies the timing of your phaser steps or of the particular step that you have selected in the encoder bar. Steve Giovanzi, 100% width in the encoder bar mean 1 beat of your speed of the step. If you want 60 BPM and a flash every beat, you need to make the sum of the width to 100 and play to how much light you need. Yes, exactly. Dampfmaschine, hello everyone and thanks for the feedback a couple of days ago, Marco. Dampfmaschine, moin. Du hattest mir auf Instagram geschrieben und ein Video geschickt. Ja, cool, dass du jetzt im Stream dabei bist. Freut mich sehr. Philipp Fuchs, not implemented yet, I guess. Mega Marco. Ach, der Peter. Servus. Witzig. Okay. Now we've programmed a whole lot of template phasers and I've talked so much that my mouth is dry already. But let me show you what we already can do with that. So remember, the first step for me always is building template phasers. I do it with just one fixture at a time. And then I use this universal template phaser to modify it with MA3, or later we will see how to do it with the recipes as well. Right, so I'm gonna capture big for you. And now we can select our washes, for example, and we'll go to our phasers and hit it with a sine wave phaser. You can see, well, now we have a sine wave, and I make use now of my MA3 items and go just 0 through 360 with the wings of 2, and we already have a usable phaser, right? And if you might want to have less fixtures being on at the same time, you now can use your sine -50. You see, well, it now has a little bit more impact because when the fixture hits 0, it stays off for a short amount of time. And when you use the -100, it's even a bit more, yeah, I would call it impactful, right? You can see more the form and the selection that you used. So for me, that's the best way of dealing with width, is by storing different template phasers with negative relative values to it, right? And you can hit it with another form, maybe the PWM that you all are familiar with. And of course I have it -50 and I have it -100 as well, right? So you see the different kind of shapes that you get. Let's do it with spots. You can maybe even see it a little bit more clearly. We have the ramp, and we'll do a 0 through 360 with the wings of 2. And you can do it with ramp -50, with ramp -100. And as I said, you can use this drag and drop method of playing around with your face, playing around with your groups, for example. Right, and you can create different shapes. 2 tips here. When you want to enter a phase, let's just reset MA3. When you want to enter a phase, you can just go to the second column, which is phase 2x, and enter, for example, 330. And then the 0 for the first step is filled in automatically. And for the speed, if you want to adjust the speed of the phaser, I'd recommend to just use the from, so the first column, and maybe set it to 15 to make it a little bit slower. So you don't have to fill in the speed 2x in your matrix. And if you want to change the form, you can always go back and call a different form from your template phasers. For example, if you want it to be pulse width -100, you can do it that way. And you can see that you can very simply create a lot of phasers, and it's kind of the same approach as an MA2. Let's, just for the sake of demonstration, let's create an even odd dimmer effect. I would go and call my washers, for example, in that case. Then I will go to sign. I will say groups to, and then you have to enter a phase of 180. And you basically have an even odd dimmer effect. You can adjust the speed of this effect if you want it to be a bit faster, like so. And now I would go into my modified phaser pool, just click and hold, and I've stored my wash even odd. So I can recall that later. Alright, Steve Giovanzi, great idea, use the relative layer in this way. Thank you very much, but honestly it's just for me like a workaround because I haven't found another way of doing it. Maybe MA improves the software in future software versions, but for now, for me that is the best way of achieving what I want to. Right, but thanks very much for your feedback. And of course, I would very kindly ask you that if you liked the stream, to hit the like button of the stream, and of course subscribe to my channel, and yeah, maybe even check me out on Instagram. You can see my Instagram profile right down there. It's Marco Kampf _lighting. Yeah, highly be appreciated. Alright. I have to just drink a nip of water. Do you have any questions? Are you there still or are you asleep? Let me know in chat. All right. Connection seems to be fine. Yeah, let's just build one other Dimmerphaser. For example, spot sim phaser, and we'll make it a snap-on. We'll make it wings to, groups to, phase of 180, which is kind of a symmetrical even odd thing. Right? And you have that smooth outfading. That's an effect that I tend to use quite frequently, so I wanted to share it with you. Still there, still there. Water Gang, yes, right, still here. Noch da, aber ab die erste Hälfte verpasst, musste Kinder ins Bett bringen. Ja, das, das wird mir stinken, wenn ich du wäre. Nein, alles gut. Cool, dass du dabei bist, obwohl die Kinder ja auch Zeit beanspruchen. Jo, auch noch da. Cool, okay. So, if you do not have any questions so far, let's save the show file. That's kind of important. and continue with color phasers. And I think that when it comes to this idea with steps and even having multiple steps, meaning more steps than just two, then I think it's very straightforward, this idea when it comes to color phasers, even though I don't tend to like such colorful effects with more than two colors. However, you can do it, and you can do it pretty quickly and pretty easily in grandMA3. So we will build a two-step color phaser, and we will use presets for this. And there's a special kind of method to do this, which is called integrate. The problem with phasers in grandMA3, or it's not really a problem, well, but they are not special pool items, but they are just presets like everything else is too. So basically, when you want to call a preset, or no, you want to integrate, that's the keyword for it. If you want to include a preset into your multiple step preset, which is a phaser, you need to integrate it, right? You just can't call it, because by calling the preset, you would also call that there is just one step within the preset. Hopes that makes somewhat sense, but you'll see what I mean. Alright. As always, let's just select one fixture. Make it on. And let's go to our preset pool. Here I have a color pool. Those color presets are universal as well. And now I am in the second step, and I use the shortcut MA_add. Which brings integrate into the command line. And then, well, let's do a lavender for the first step. And then we click the right arrow to create a new step. Now we're in step 2. And we will hit MA_add for integrate again. And do a CTO. And you can already see that my washer is moving back and forth between those two presets, right? So we'll store that as a phaser, and this is a ramp kind of thing, right? I'll call it and show you in the phaser editor. You can see it's straight lines with a linear change within every attribute. And when you select all the steps, remember the asterisk, go to color, go into the phaser editor to form, and hit the sine wave. You see now it's a smoother fading curve. We'll store this phaser as well. Call this color sine. This we'll call color ramp. And then call that and go to transition 0. So we have a color PWM. Alright, those three color phasers are again stored as universal phasers, so that if I want to use my spots instead of the washes, I will select my spots. Let's do a grid phaser with this. As you can see in the selection grid, I have more than just one dimension stored to this group, and I can go and start the sine phaser. Of course, I need to give a dimmer value to it. And let's go to capture and maybe just do it 0 through 360. So it's just running from right to left over my rig. If I want to invert the direction, I change the phase from to 0 through 360, then it's running from left to right. Of course, I could hit it with wings 2 again. Yeah, all that fun stuff. Dampfmaschine, what does integrate exactly do? Yeah, I tried to explain it, but it's a little bit hard to do, especially in English. If you would just call a preset, or let me say it this way, the amount of steps is stored within a preset. So if you have a color preset, that usually is just one step, right? And the amount of steps is stored in the preset. So if you want to build a phaser, meaning you want to build a preset with more than one step, and you would just call the preset that has stored one step into itself, then you can't have a phaser, right? Because that is it's just not working this way. But you want to include, I would call it include, but it's called integrate. You want to integrate this preset, which has one step, into your phaser or into one of your phaser steps, right? So that's the reason why you need to integrate. Marvin Armstetter, it integrates presets data into other steps of the programmer. Yeah. Marvin is the pro. Cool, dass du da bist übrigens. It's exactly how he says. All right. Wow, it's already 14 past 8. Time is running so quickly when you're doing live streams. Okay, so let's move on. Now we have a good amount of template phasers for our dimmer and for our colors. Of course, you can build a whole lot more. Let's continue with position phasers. And for that, honestly, I think the quickest way is to go into your predefined phasers. Remember, we have imported those predefined phasers with a macro at the very start of the stream. And I will just go and copy my circle, the circle invert, the tilt and the pan. I think I have to... Oh, it doesn't work this way. I have to do it on the second screen. Phaser. Predefined template. Copy. Circle, circle invert, tilt and pan, and I'm copying those to my template phaser pool. Right, let's move them a little bit. I want to let's go for tilt, then we go for pan, then one. No, we'll do it this way. All right. So let's just select a group of lights, for example my spots, and hit them with a tilt sign phaser, and you can see, well, you have what you would expect. You can go into the phaser editor to see what this phaser does, and it's already a sine wave, so it has those smooth transitions from one step to another step. And I'd highly recommend to check out the steps view of your phaser editor, because there you can see, you go to position and you go to the relative layer, you can see the actual values that are stored in here, right? So there's nothing in the absolute layer, which makes sense for a position phaser, and we have a -30 on the tilt and a 30 on the tilt in the second step. Of course, you could modify the size, and you could build different sizes of effects as we have done with the Dimmerphasers, but I think because the time it's so late already, I won't do it. But I would recommend to build at least 3 different sizes for your position phasers as well. But the thing that I want to show you now is how to build symmetrical movement phasers, and I already have posted a video on how to do circles, but of course you can do that with pan as well, and I'll show you how I do it. I do it using recipes. So I have this in every show. I have a group, let me highlight it, that is called MH left, MH, moving head left, MH left, and moving heads right. So, and those groups, I always use them in every show for bumps, etc. But we will use those 2 groups for our recipe, because to create a symmetrical pan, we need 1/2 of the rig panning this way and the other half panning exactly the other way. So we'll do that now by just edit the settings of an empty tile and enter a recipe. And as I said, we want the MH left group. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, that was MH right. MH left. And we want this to template phaser. We want it to circle. Okay, we'll start with the circle, and then we'll go and build a second recipe line with all the moving heads of the right side and doing the circle inverted. Alright, and I will call this circle sim. Off highlight, and let's go to my wash groups. Phaser, hit it with a symmetrical circle, and you can see, well, we have a symmetrical circle. Let's go to the blind position, and again, we can now hit this template effect with a face, 0 through 360. You can see that looks like a total mess because you have to say wings too, but now you have a symmetrical circle look that we all love. Alright, I will just copy this symmetrical circle and I will edit the settings, and I will swap circle and circle inverted. So I have a circle preset which runs the opposite way. Let's go for circle inverted, and here we go for circle. That should work. Select the washers. Right. So we now have circle sim invert. Right? And again, I can hit this with face, groups, blocks, and so on. Cool. Let's go on and build a symmetrical pan. And for that, we need to move those and copy this and call it pan sign inverted, right? So that's just the predefined phaser we have imported earlier, and we've copied it. I select one fixture and go in there, go into the phaser editor, make sure you have both steps selected, and let me see, then you go there and you shift the timing, you shift the direction, and store pan inverted override. And so now we have a pan and a pan inverted. so that we can build our symmetrical pan phaser using recipes, as we did with circles. Group MH left, template phasers, pan, and we go for moving head right, template phasers. Where are you? Pan sign invert. Right. Let's double check if it is working. We select our wash group and hit it with a pan. Oops, I will rename it. Pan sim. Symmetrical pan wave phaser. Steve Giovanzi, if you use a magic preset for the sim and you have a odd number of fixture, the center will be correctly correlated, I guess. I haven't tried this method so far with magic or magic, or it's called, how's it called now? Grid pos. I know you can build symmetrical phasers with this method as well, but as I said, in MA2 and also in MA3 world, you basically always have more than one method to achieve the same thing. So I think that's a good advice, and I will definitely check that out as well. Right. Okay, I think we have done the most basic things and most things I wanted to show you. Let me know if you do have any questions, and then we will build a few more modified phasers, because now everything we've done are like template phasers. And the real fun is building modified phasers with phase, etc. And now I've used the MA3 method all the time, and I will show you how it works with recipes in just 1 second. All right. Okay. We will go and just take our wash group, and I'll now just build a few modified phasers to show you how quick I am once I have everything set up the way it is now. So let's go. Wash sim, go to phasers, let's do a sine. Let's go phase 0 through 360 and let's shuffle it. I have a macro for, you can hit shuffle on the MA3, but I have a macro for it as well. So I can just do a random dimmer chase if you like to. And I could say, well, I want it to be a little bit darker. So I go to sine -50. And maybe that's exactly what I need for my song. So I go to phaser, modified, hold, press and hold an empty tile, and I have wash random 1. Right, let's go to our templates. Maybe we want a pulse width and we want no shuffle, so we off this. Oh, I think it remembers the shuffle phase. I have to assign the phase again. No, okay, I have to select the fixtures again. Pulse width, phase 0 through 360, wings 4. Yeah, that might be an effect you want to use, but I want it to be a little bit quicker, so I set 120. Right. go to my modified phasers. I call this PWM sim fast. Right? You can see that it's very easy to build a lot of phasers this way. And of course, you can store this into a preset, but you can store this as well into a queue, of course. The only problem with it is that once you've stored it and you recall the preset, the MA3 information isn't restored. So I really hope that MA can improve on that, because that way it would be really easy to modify this already existing phaser again and again and again. Right? But I wanted to show you the recipe method of it. And just to recall it, recipes are really useful whenever you want to clone your rig to another amount of fixtures, basically. Then this recipe method is really great, because you can just update your group and then cook your recipes, which are in a preset, or they might be in a queue as well. And your whole show looks as you would expect it to. So to do that, I'll clear out, and maybe let's select the spots. And we go to phaser. Now we go to the modified phaser pool, hit an empty tile, edit settings, and we're into the recipe editor. And we'll hit recipe. Now we say, or we wouldn't even have to select the group, of course, because we do it here. Spot sim. We'll go for template phaser sine -50. Then we use MA3 0 through 360, and we can already call it and see, okay, that's the way how our phaser looks. And we can go back into this recipe line, and by looking at it, it is kind of similar to the effect line editor in grandMA2, right? You have your selection on the left side, the selection of fixtures. Unfortunately, there isn't a take selection button like in MA2. That would be really handy. But you can select the group, then you select the preset, and as I said, I use my template phasers as kind of being a form in grandMA2. So basically this is where you set your form. You can do a sine, you can do a PWM, a ramp, and whatnot. And then you hit it with the modifiers and say a phase. You can assign groups and blocks and all that jazz. Right? Maybe let's do it symmetrical. Let's do it links 2. Unfortunately, those presets or the recipes and presets, they are not live updating. So to see my my new selection, I have to recall the phaser, which is kind of a bummer as well. So that's the reason why I said it is kind of complicated and time consuming doing it that way. But the big advantage is that you can now update your group, cook the preset, and it will have the same look again. Right. Let's label it. We'll call that spot sine sim. And now let's build I don't know, let's build a combined phaser, because of course you can do multiple recipe lines in one preset. So for example, I want maybe for a chorus look or something, I want my spots, I use spot sim, and I use the snap on -50 with a phase of 0 through -360, and maybe some odd grouping to make it look a little bit random. Let's just hit it. Yeah, that might work. We edit it and we'll add a movement to this effect. So I'll go to Spot Sim as well, enter template phasers and make a circle 0 through 360 with a grouping of 3. We'll have a look. Yeah, that doesn't look too good. Here comes the second disadvantage of recipes in place. You can't shuffle your selection. What you would have to do is you have to create a shuffled group of your selection to get it work, or you have to do it without recipe lines, at least in software version 1.6. So what have I done? So let's go here. Let's make it a group of 7, for example. Maybe that looks a little bit more random. Yeah, that looks a little bit more random. And then we go to spot look. Maybe this could be your effect for a chorus, right? So we call this spot snap on circle random, and you can recall it, of course, and you can enter the preset and you can modify your effect line. You can modify your phase, your groups, your blocks, your wings. You can even modify your speed. As I said, maybe I want the movement to be a little bit slower, and I would go here and here and say we just want it to be 15. You have to recall it. And that looks even quicker. What have I done? Speed the circle 15. And we have to do it 2. Yeah, now we have a slower circle. I think you can see where I'm heading here, right? You can build your phasers kind of similar to grandMA3, but it's a little bit more complicated, and it is a little bit more yeah, it has less features because you have no take selection, you have no shuffle function, and it is not live updating, at least when you do this in presets. When you use a recipe in a queue, which I'll show you in a second, this is live updating, so you at least can see what you're entering in your recipe line whenever you put it in. Any questions so far? I have to drink a sip of water again. Alright, so once again, if you like the stream, then make sure to smash the thumbs up button. Subscribe to my channel. I guess you can activate the bell, whatever that means. And yeah, if you're more interested in the stuff that I'm doing, then check out my Instagram, marcokampf_lighting. Thank you. Steve Giovanzi, what does the macro spot look? Okay, so that's a little bit off topic, but I have because there is no exec on, no action buttons yet in grandMA3, I have set up a macro page basically as a action button page. So this is my main busking page, and I can go between different positions, different color effects, different colors, different dimmer effects, and so on and so forth. So basically it's really simple. It's just a sequence with 6 different cues: beam look, spot look, gobo 1, gobo 2, prism, and prism and gobo. So, and that is everything that I use for my busking page. I have this color feedback, as you can tell. Yeah, but it's simple as that. I have all presets for that, for those 6 different looks, and those presets are stored as recipes into my spot look sequence. I have a sequence in my sequence pool. It is not assigned to an executor. It's just living in my sequence pool, and I trigger the different cues with these macros, right? So I have a beam look, spot look, and so on and so forth. Simple as that. Are the action buttons coming to MA3? Well, actually, I hope they will, but I do not know. And of course, even if they are coming, nobody knows when they will come. So for me, this is my kind of workaround to the missing action buttons in MA3. And I tend to like it because it's like super clean, and you really think twice if you need stuff or you don't. Because it's kind of complicated to build it this way, but it's kind of very clean, right? So as you can see, I have different colors that I can call. I have different dimmer effects, 3 different dimmer effects. So, and I can fade it in. That's just a sign. Here I have a snap on. And then I have different movements for just the spots, just the washers, and so on and so forth. Right. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you before we go to the other show file with the MegaPointies. Are you planning to do a show entirely on MA3? Actually, I have done quite a few shows, I would say, kind of like 10 shows plus or minus in the last couple of months. As I said, smaller shows and just busking shows, but everything worked out pretty well, and I had a good amount of fun. But of course, you have to be aware of all the problems, all the small little bugs you might find in MA3. But once it is up and running, then it's a whole lot of fun. All right. Yeah, recipes in queues, and that is like the way to go whenever you are programming like a Go show. At least when it's not the quick and dirty way with MA-Tricks that I've showed you. Of course, you can select your fixtures, take a template phaser, for example this one, assign a phase, and you're good. This could be the effect we're after, and you can go and store this to a queue. But as I said, the problem is you can't recall the ingredients, so to speak. So if you want to modify it, you have to start from ground up again. And if you want to change the amount of fixtures, so if you're planning to do a show which has to work with different kind of festival settings, for example, then this method isn't that good because you can't adjust your effect to different amounts of fixtures. Then you would go to recipes, as we've done in presets, and you can do that in cues as well. So I will just off everything and we will build a little cue list just for the sake of demonstration. Let's go and select all our washers and all our spots and make them full. Let's stick them in the blind position and make them blue, or let's do the spots cyan, right? And the washers we'll put into just a straight position. Right, and off the dimmer. And store that as Q1. So store 1, please. Merge it in, so that's basically our prep queue. And then we go and on the washers. Let's see. Why is it red? All right. And then the second queue, let's bring in our spots. Make them full. And I want them to be in a spot open look. That goes into the prep queue, merge, full. Oh no, blind, store 1, full, and straight, store 2 times 3. So now we have a second queue. With our spots. Let's off this again. It isn't working the way I want it to. Of course. Okay, we have to go to first queue. Merge, full, 2. Right, now we have it the way I wanted it to. So we have a prep queue, queue number 1, and here we have our second queue. And now I want to add, for example, a dimmer effect to the second queue, right? So I would hit edit, go to the sequence, I would go to the second queue, and I will add a recipe. And if you do not see your recipe editor, you have to go to the settings, mask, and say show recipes, and now you should see it. And I want my spots to do a sim, a sine wave with a phase of 0 through 360. And I'll do wings 4 for this effect, just to... Right? So, and you can see, as I'm doing it in the queue and not within a preset, the phaser is live updating to whatever I do. Right? So that might be the verse or the pre-chorus of the song. Let's build the chorus, and for that I will change the washers to being red, and my spots, they are going to white, and they're going into the blind position, and I'll store 3 times 2. So now I have a third cue. This is the chorus, and I want to hit it with our effect that we've built earlier, phaser modified this thing, right? And I will just merge it into Q3. So I say store 3, please merge it in. Right, and now we have our little cue list with effects. So that's the prep cue, that is the verse coming up, and we can see what we have as an effect because we have it stored in into the queue as recipe line, and we can modify it. That is method 1, and method 2 is just to build a preset and storing that preset into the queue, like in Q3. Here we have our chorus look. Yes, those are the main methods that I'm using for recipes. So let's just go back to our chart once again to recall what we've done this evening. We have created so-called template phasers. Those are universal and they are very basic. It's just those are just phasers that contain a basic rule for what to do. They contain an attribute or like several attributes, and they contain the form. And then we modified those phasers with a matrix, which you can store into a queue or you can store into a preset. But remember, you can't recall the matrix. Or you can do it with a recipe line, either in a preset or in a queue, right? So those are the main methods that I use, and it really depends on what you want to achieve. If it has to be quick and dirty, you really want to achieve something that looks good quickly, and maybe you're doing a full production, meaning that you do not have to worry about the amount of fixtures you're working with might change, then the matrix method is great. But whenever you are programming a show which has to work with different kinds of rigs and sizes of rigs, then you should go for the recipe method. All right. Yeah, questions so far? I have to drink another bit of water. Feel free to ask questions of any kind, and then I would wrap it up with this MegaPointe-Grid that I built, just to have a little bit fun or with our phasers, right? The action button page is at the top of the action list to implement. If you use recipe in a sequence with multiple queues, the fade time isn't working. Did you notice this as well? I am not really sure what you mean, but I could imagine that the fade time that you enter within a recipe might be overwritten by the fade time that is stored into the queue. I haven't noticed that, but let's just find out if we... This is our dimmer effect in the first queue. Or is it? Yeah, that's the dimmer effect. And we want to bring that in 10 seconds. So really slow. I'm not sure if you need to enter both of them. I will do, just to be on the safe side. Then I'll off the sequence and I'll go it. So that's the prep queue. And now the second queue is coming up and we'll see if the dimmer effect fades in just 2 seconds or 3 seconds, which is the timing of the queue, or the 10 seconds, which is the timing of the recipe that I've entered. And it's coming in. It's kind of hard to tell, but I guess you're right. I guess the timing of the recipe has been overridden by the timing of the queue. Markus Gandola, guten Abend, habe leider erst jetzt eingeschaltet. Darf ich fragen, wie passt du den Speed an? Immer im Preset oder mit Speedmasters? Sehr gute Frage. Ich mache das mal auf Deutsch, weil die Frage jetzt auch auf Deutsch war. Im Grunde genommen mache ich das ziemlich klar so, wenn ich baske, dann habe ich einen Speedmaster für Dimmer-Effekte, einen Speedmaster für Positions- und einen Speedmaster für Farbeffekte. Das heißt, ich passe den Speed bei Busking-Shows immer mit Speedmastern an. Bei Go-Shows oder Timecode-Shows generell, wenn ich wirklich eine Sequenz mir baue mit verschiedenen Cues, dann schaue ich wirklich, dass der Effekt das Timing hat, was ich brauche. Und das mache ich dann eben entweder in MA-Tricks, wie ich es euch gezeigt habe, oder ich mache es eben in der Recipe-Line. Genau. Also Busking, Speedmasters, Go-Show, Timecode-Show, whatever, würde ich immer mit dem Timing, da würde ich das Timing immer direkt in den entsprechenden Cue oder den das entsprechende Preset mit reinschreiben. Alright. So far, so good. I would say. If you do not have any questions that are phaser related, wie nutzt du RAID? Gar nicht. Simple Antwort, nutze ich nicht. Ich nutze tatsächlich einfach nur, also ich habe einen Speedmaster, wie gesagt, für Dimmer-Effekte, einen für Positionseffekte, einen für Farbeffekte und damit komme ich ganz gut aus. Ich habe dann immer noch, ihr könnt ja, ich gehe jetzt mal hier in meinen Dimmer-Effekt-Q-Stack, ihr habt hier immer ja noch, das heißt Speed Scale. Damit könnt ihr im Prinzip nochmal das nehmen, was sozusagen aus eurem Speedmaster rauskommt und das teilen oder multiplizieren mit einer bestimmten Zahl. Das verwende ich quasi noch. Das mache ich aber einfach so, ja, Pi mal Daumen, also der Speed, den ich sozusagen einstelle oder den ich auch dann hinterher tappe, das ist wirklich die BPM-Zahl, die ein Song hat. Also das ist dann immer grob um die 100 BPM, mal weniger, mal mehr, aber da arbeite ich jetzt nicht mit BPM über 300 oder unter, keine Ahnung, 60, sondern da schaue ich wirklich, dass die BPM dem musikalischen Sinne entsprechen und die Effekte, die passe ich mir dann über über Speedmaster und über den Speed Scale entsprechend an, dass es dann quasi zu dem entsprechenden Tempo passt. Alright. So right now I'll save that and I will load the Showfile that I have prepared. Load livestream phasers. I think that's it. And because I don't have this in capture, I have to set up my capture cam to being just 1 second. Capture has to be my screen 2. Let's see if that works. Yep, seems to be working. Alright, so let's off everything. As I said, here I've just built a grid of, let me see, select grid. It's 8 by 8 MegaPointies, and now we just can have a little bit of fun with phasers. And I have built a grid group and a sim group. As you can see, the sim group is just a linear group. Right? And then I have a left group and a right group. As I said, those groups I always tend to use. Grid, symmetrical, left half, right half of the rig. And yeah, I have built a few phasers. That's like a tilt wave with a gobo in it. Circle in the other direction with a cool grouping. Oh, color effect. That's always good as well. Yeah. I mean, that hasn't any real world use, but it's just fun to play around with this stuff. Okay, let's build a few phasers from scratch. And because I have set it up in this matrix way, I will use my grid group for the most part. Go to phaser, and here I think it's mostly the predefined phasers. Let's, for example, just go with a circle. And now we can, for example, do a wings of 2 and assign a face to it. And you can see already that there is a cool shape coming up. It is not symmetrical because I haven't selected the symmetrical circle. So the only thing that is symmetrical is the face, right? That goes from left to right. And now the cool thing is, something that we haven't used so far, is you can use this matrix in a second dimension. So because I have stored not only X information, but Y information as well into my group, I can now play around with the face of the Y coordinate as well. And you can see as I'm modifying it, cool looking shapes start to come in. Let's do wings 2 groups. I tend to like this one. And I'll store it to a sequence that I've already built. Store selected, so just store please. Then maybe we do, let's take the symmetrical, no, let's stay with the grid group. Grid group, and go to phaser, hit it with the, do I have a symmetrical circle? Yes, that's the symmetrical circle. And now we hit it with wings 2 and a face. Oh, I like that. I just can tell you that's fun playing around with. I mean, as I said, as long as you do not have a grid of 8 by 8 MegaPointies, it doesn't make too much sense to play around with it, but it's still a whole lot of fun. I think I like this one, but I wanted to go the other way around, so I type -80 here, and we'll make it a lot faster, right? Okay, that's a little bit too fast. Okay, let's play around with the X phase, with the Y phase. I think I like that one. I'll just store it. I just do for fun a few phasers, and then we can look at my cue list with all those fun phasers. If you want to check this grid, if you want to check this out, I will upload the show file. So if you are watching this video as video on demand, then make sure to check the video description because I will have loaded up this particular show file for you to just play around with, right? Cool. G009, that must have stressed out that little nook. Let's check how many frames per second I have, because I have the feeling that my little nook holds up quite good with whatever I throw at it. So it's always like around 60 frames per second. Even with the gobo. Okay, with gobo we go down to 17 frames per second. Yeah, okay. It's still fun. It's a bit trippy. I know that. All right. For the next show, I need a grid of 8x8 megapointers. Yes, honestly, I wouldn't do a show without it. Honestly, it's just, that's a game changer. Always do shows with those kind of matrices. Let's just build 2 or 3 to round up the stream. Select. Let's do a Dimmerphaser. Let's do a snap-on and assign. Let's just assign a phase in the Y dimension. So now you can see the phaser isn't running from left to right, but it's running from top to bottom. Might be a little bit hard to see, but trust me. And then we will hit it with a tilt sign as well. I think that looks good. And do a phase of 360 here as well. I think that looks good. Let's try to play around with the X phase, but most likely I will stick with that. Wings 2, want it to be symmetrical. Okay, let's store that. One last phaser for the evening. Let's select the grid group, go to phaser, hit it with circle sim, assign a wings of 2, and let's play around with blocks, for example. I haven't done that so far. Or blocks, of course, and whoops. Yeah, I think that is cool. All right, more speed, I guess. Let's do it 120. Because why not? Let's grill those MegaPointies. Store, please. And okay, I think I'll wrap it up at this point because I'm already streaming for over 2 hours. If you like the stream, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, check me out on Instagram. You find the link to my Instagram there. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention. Let's have a look. I think, yeah, we are already over 20 people in the stream, which I think isn't too bad for this being a real a topic which is kind of very special, right? But it was fun for me. I hope for you as well. Let me look in chat. X4 bars and MA3D make my FPS go down. Yeah, of course they do. All right. Thank you very much for joining. I will go through the queue list of the phasers I built with this grid, and then I'll wrap it up. So thanks a lot for joining. Alright, G009, thank you Marco, great stream. Well, thanks so much for joining. Miko, thank you for the stream. Michael Wilkinson, thank you Marco. Dampfmaschine, thank you very much for the stream. Thanks a lot, see you next time. Thank you Marco. Well, as I said, thank you very much for your attention and for joining. And yeah, if you have any questions, then just feel free to contact me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And have much fun with phasers. As I said, make sure to come back to the video. I will post that show file so you can download it and play around with it for your own. Yes. Have a nice evening and see you next time.